life, I've been a global traveler, seeking cultures and traditions that are just as vibrant today as in times past. We're opening doors, stepping into worlds most never see, because that's where the best stories are. We're sharing tales of local life and the working world, plus spending time with some of the most interesting people you'd ever want to meet. It's truly privileged access that always leaves me excited to explore more. In this episode of Exploring More with Karine, we're visiting castles and palaces still lived in by their namesakes. We'll head to Schloss Levenstein in Germany and step into the fairy tale Mespelbrunn Castle. We'll spend time at Highclere Castle, the real Downton Abbey in the UK, and finally explore the grand Lobkowicz Palace in Prague, the Czech Republic. Our first stop takes us to Germany and the elegant Schloss Levenstein. Tucked into the forested banks of Germany's Main River is Schloss Levenstein. This prized location hand-picked long ago.
The wife of our ancestor, she sent out riders and they checked all the villages along the river where the parish books showed the best weather, the most fresh wind, the least fog, and she bought the land, so that was done.
The whole estate is so full of nature, you lose your way. Nothing is comparable to this spot.
In this idyllic setting, the Löwensteins thrived. Unlike most, the family's rise to prominence came not militarily, but via a more interesting route.
One of our philosophies was it's much nicer to grow by marriage than by war. So we never won anything by war, but we won quite a bit by marrying nice girls with a bit of property attached to it.
This grand estate was the only French-style palace in Lower Franconia. The vision of Rémy de la Fosse, architect of the Château de Versailles. Official archives trace the family roots back to the year 900, and reminders of their enduring legacy and traditions are plentiful. But one of the family's most precious possessions cannot be found adorning these walls, or for that matter, anywhere within the confines of this grand palace. That treasure is Homburg Kalmuth, a rugged escarpment with a remarkable combination of soil and microclimate. Over the centuries, the Löwensteins have cultivated some of the region's most desirable grapes along this imposing cliff. Despite inclines of up to 80 degrees, the property is a priceless asset for viticulture.
Of course, the quality of the wine always depends on the spot. So just by history and tradition, the aristocratic families have the best spots.
Winemaking grew into a passion when the family discovered that grapes actually thrived in the withering heat and unique geology of this ancient place.
The name already is pre-Celtic, so it's a very, very old name, and it means a warm place where you can stay over winter.
In the 12th century, monks built the nearly 8 miles of vined terraces. But 1,000 years before that, the site was planted with another crop, by the Romans.
The pharmacist of the Roman legion found out he could plant all his medical herbs and not import them from Rome in a dried version, but he had them fresh. We had this checked by a botanist, and they discovered 120 Roman medical plants, all coming from the southeast Mediterranean, and they have survived 2,000 years.
For us, we feel all this history, and the microclimate there is very special. It's probably the warmest microclimate in Bavaria. We totally feel Mediterranean, and with the Mediterranean feeling, we have the Mediterranean taste in the wine.
Harvesting this bounty is anything but easy.
There are no machines, it's all hand harvest. The sun burns down, it's steep, it's difficult to hold the balance. It's a challenge, but the quality is so well known that we keep on.
After the harvest, new wines are born in the ultra-modern winegut, built within the historic stables. Combining insight and expertise, the grapes receive exceptional care.
On one level, they are pressed by a technology which is the softest you can have, and then they are pumped in one level into the barrels.
Grapes from the Rheingau and Baden add depth and diversity. It's a hands-on process inspired by centuries of acquired wisdom.
We make wine in a very natural fashion. When the grapes come here into the cellar, nothing is added to it. No chemical, of course, no sugar. That means it's very clear and natural.
Each vintage is infused with the character of the season, the enchanting power of nature untouched. From the rare treasure of Schloss Levenstein, we're now heading north to learn more about an entirely different style of German castle. In fairy tales, deep woods are often home to magical castles. And in Germany's dense Spessart forest, it's actually true.
Normally they have the castles in very open places. But here it's very hidden and closed. You will not find it if you don't know there is a castle. In all the wars, even in the 30 Years' War, they never found it. Never.
Schloss Mespelbrunn was born not from the daydream of a wealthy aristocrat, but rather from an act of selfless heroism.
There was one of the member family Echter who helped the Duke Archbishop in a very dangerous situation, and he helped him to stay alive. He carried him on his shoulders as long as he had to. He never stopped, and then the Duke Archbishop woke up and was happy to be alive and said, "You saved my life. I will give you this place as a present for your family."
Carved from nature in 1412, Mespelbrunn was at first a hunting lodge, a place of bountiful feasts and tall tales, of jolly clansmen and proper nobles, of brave knights matching wits with elusive deer, wild boar, and on occasion unruly bandits, and even radical Hussites, as the Echter family sought to tame this wild land. In the 16th century, a new generation reshaped the castle into the more pleasing form we see today.
200 years ago, this was completely closed. You couldn't look through the archbows. Well, one day they decided to take these parts out and put a romantic archbow in. And that was the best what happened to the house.
Schloss Mespelbrunn overflows with distinctive details, all of which have somehow survived the continuing threat of war and weather, except for one inadvertent casualty that came in World War II.
They covered this in wood to keep it safe, but they didn't know they would have the most hardest winters in their life. Those winters in the Second World War were extremely cold. After the war, when they took the cover off, the pieces came off because the water dripped between and froze. So no weapons, but the frost destroyed it a little bit.
One key symbol that has transcended the centuries, along with the story behind it, is the Echter family crest.
The 3 rings are from the family Echter. And the family Echter had those crests for many, many, many centuries. There was a very strange and wonderful story from this family. There were 3 very strong boys, and they had always trouble with other strong knights. And once they had a fight, and one of the other knights was killed. They were taken to court and they were banished to live in the woods. And they became fair game for hunters and everybody who came upon them. During these years in the woods, the three boys, they said, once in a month we should meet. And so when they had their meeting point, they had to put the horses together. And after they came free, they took the 3 rings in memory of those years when they had to put their horses, to fix their horses, on that meeting point.
And so the spirit of the 3 brothers lives on. Mythical Mespelbrunn is a rare gem, bathed in beauty. A Renaissance-style masterpiece that captures the essence of life in the 16th century. I hope you too will do what I did and explore Schloss Mespelbrunn for yourself, and perhaps even encounter its signature moat trout. In this splendidly serene setting, you almost forget there's an outside world, and you'll find yourself in absolutely no hurry to leave. Our next stop is the UK, Highclere Castle, the real Downton Abbey, where my dogs, Finse and Charlie, were both born. In the period drama Downton Abbey, this imposing castle and way of life was kept alive by the wealth of an American heiress. A story of marriage and status that actually played out many times in real life. Over a period of 30 years, more than $20 billion in today's money came shuttling across the Atlantic to prop up Britain's aristocracies and their stately homes. The estate is in reality Highclere Castle, and its history is equally compelling, as it too was rescued by English heiress Almina Wombwell.
Lady Almina came here as a young 19-year-old bride in 1895. She was the daughter of Alfred de Rothschild. She was actually illegitimate and married Geordie's great-grandfather. She then acquired immediately a wonderful place in society. Really, her inheritance, which she brought here, is terribly important to the family, and it means we're still here today.
Much as in the television series, the world at Highclere Castle changed abruptly with the onset of World War I. And Lady Almina stepped forward, committing the estate to help support the war effort.
She turned Highclere into a hospital. She took in patients, officers who were wounded in the Somme, in Gallipoli.
Including officers from the Royal Flying Corps, with the early aircraft who had broken bones but survived crashes.
She made such a difference to so many people's lives.
Each room is beautifully decorated with a personality all of its own. One room, well known in the series, is not surprisingly missing its most notorious guest.
So this looks like the room where the Turkish fellow met his end.
I know, you're completely right, and then ended up being dragged around the corridor.
With privileged access to Highclere Castle, Viking offers a relaxed, immersive experience here. Every room, every display speaks volumes about the intriguing, enduring family history, including an extensive Egyptian exhibit where Highclere's kitchen used to be.
She's from about 3,500 years old or so.
The collection came from excavations by the 5th Earl of Carnarvon.
My great-grandfather, the 5th Earl, he was an extraordinary adventurer. He was such an inquisitive man. Of course, he teamed up with Howard Carter and then found the rock-cut steps down to Tutankhamun's tomb, and the 2 men together then opened up the archaeological find probably of all time, really.
If you've ever been intrigued by the lifestyles of the British aristocracy, join Viking for an exploration of Highclere Castle. We can't wait to share with you the glories of times gone by. And finally, we're off to Prague in the Czech Republic to spend time with William Lobkowicz, one of the most humble castle owners you'll ever meet. Prague is spectacular, and there's much to see and do in this historic city.
A favourite place, and in my opinion, one of the world's best curated museum experiences, is the Lobkowicz Palace in the Prague Castle grounds. The noble Lobkowicz family lost all their properties twice and regained them twice. First to the Nazis during World War II, and second to the Communists in 1948. Their story is fascinating, and our experience in the Lobkowicz Palace takes you on an intriguing journey of this important family. Powerful moments that actually, at one stage, made me cry. The first Prince Lobkowicz called the palace home in 1568, and through the passing centuries it grew into a centre of influence and power, with the family a rare source of continuity in Bohemia. But in 1939 the world changed. Maximilian Lobkowicz was forced to flee the family home of nearly 400 years on just a moment's notice.
My grandmother was on a train. She overheard some German soldiers talking about the big event that was going to be happening, the takeover in Czechoslovakia. Wired my grandfather, and he was able to get out with my dad the night before the Nazis invaded the country.
Maximilian returned to his beloved palace in 1945. But when communism swept the country just 3 years later, he had to escape again, leaving with just his hat and his coat, never to return. As a result of the restitution laws, in the 1990s, Lobkowicz Palace and 9 other estates belonging to the family were finally returned after over 40 years. With significant restoration, the palace is immaculate once more, and the family have chosen to share with us one of Europe's greatest private collections of art, treasures that span nearly 5 centuries.
A lot of these things have been hidden for so long. We came across many of these things lying in depositories in damp conditions or not having been up on walls for a long time. So it's wonderful seeing them come back to life. It's such a pleasure to see things restored.
With inside access to the Lobkowicz family, Viking offers a privileged experience here. Every room, every display speaks to the family's fascinating royal past.
This is the Lobkowicz coat of arms.
So your coat of arms always has to be presented with the crown?
That was
And the
extremely
crown
important.
means
That meant we could marry the kings and queens, and that we were all born princes of the Holy Roman Empire.
Though titles were abolished long ago, the crest remains an important part of the family heritage, and it's still worn today on a signet ring on the left or the right little finger. Strolling amid one of the largest private art collections in Europe is a real treat, providing an insider's view of life in Bohemia, along with a diverse collection of rarely shown masterpieces, including 2 significant canalettos and Bruegel the Elder's haymaking, one of the pinnacles of European landscape painting.
This little guy here, can you see in there? It's a whole painting, actually, in and of itself.
Yes,
if you put a little frame around it, it looks like, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Isn't that wonderful?
But one of the most unexpected exhibits included this. Yes, Beethoven's 5th Symphony. This remarkable music is dedicated to the Lobkowicz family, Beethoven's faithful benefactor. Had it not been for the Lobkowicz family, some of the best-known pieces of classical music would not exist today.
If you look here, you'll see he's writing and scribbling and making everything there.
There are also handwritten manuscripts from Mozart and Haydn, along with instruments played by some of the world's greatest musicians.
The history of music in our family is really about the patronage of music. It reached its apex with the 7th Prince Lobkowicz. That particular Lobkowicz spent, I would say, a good part of the family fortune on music, but he enjoyed it, and I think we're all better for that.
Join us again here on Viking.TV as we open more doors around the world on our quest to explore the planet's most fascinating cultures and delightful traditions.